this kind of magical thing of termites are absolutely incredible at constructing. They work with very limited resources and they work with materials that are entirely sourced from their environment. And they're able to create something which is perfectly suitable not only for them, but also for the fungus with which they live in symbiosis. And what is incredible about them is that you can find one termite species living in one place on Earth where they have certain conditions in terms of its climate, but also the soil composition. And they will have one strategy for mediating this relational situation. And then you have another species that lives in slightly different conditions, maybe something similar, but with a more higher clay content. And they will have a very different strategy based on similar approaches, but different approaches depending on the environment. So the termites carried around just under this threshold, so it's a solid in their mouth. And then, well, I'm an architect, and back when I started researching, I was very interested, and I still am, into what new digital fabrication technologies, such as 3D printing, can change in architecture. And the termites became interesting because they provide us with a solution potentially to, on the one hand, what we can use a complex shape and geometry for, such as delivering new functions within a building or a building envelope, building skin. And on the other hand, they also provide a model for how we can design and manage this complexity. Like this termite here, it's taking the little blob and it's, but we do use kind of computational methods and algorithmic methods. But when they operate at a larger scale, they become very, very complex and they give surprising results you couldn't really predict. That's very much. Well, one of the fascinating things that the termite mound does is that it maintains a humid internal climate, even though it sits almost in the desert in a very arid environment. And it does this while still exchanging oxygen with its surroundings and environment. Because the termite colony has a very high metabolism. It needs to exchange a lot of air, just like if we were buried, a human, underground. So the way that it has to combine these two seemingly contradictory desires to exchange respiratory gases while preserving a very steep moisture gradient is not dissimilar to our lungs. So what we hope to do is use the geometries and the mechanisms found in the mound skin to control the way that a building adapts to its environment and the way that it actually exchanges moisture, heat, air, things like this with its surroundings. Yep. Perfect. So this is the Meristem wall, and it's a project or a prototype we created as a response to the termite research. And it incorporates the network and the specific channels and their effects that we discovered in these small-scale experiments, in the laboratory experiments. But we also wanted to investigate what it means to take it to an architectural component, a part of an architectural space or a building. And in doing that means that we have to incorporate not only the channel network of the termite mound, but also functions such as electricity and water pipes, not to mention windows, and thinking about how this might act as a facade in an urban environment of a building. Termites build generally from mud or earth and clay, but they also live in symbiosis with a fungus, and they create these structures inside of the mound called fungus combs, which are made from chewed up wood, particles of dead wood and fungus together. And they create quite incredible little structures that essentially act like distributed little 3D printers, the termites are, out of wooden structures. So we were exploring whether it was possible to use a similar system for architectural materials and use sawdust that we could 3D print and use as a binder a living fungus. So that's a project we called Pulpfaction, and this is the column Protomycochaeon that came out of it. Structures which are based on the needs of the fungus as well as the kind of needs of the termite to be able to access and walk, because they seem to be very intricately designed. But just like in our process what we have here, and it is actually one of the first examples in the world of a structure that's been 3D printed from live fungus and wood as a mixture together. So it doesn't contain any glues or any plastics or polymers. Instead, it's actually the network of mycelium, the root system of the fungus, that binds together all of the wooden particles into a solid material that we could potentially use to build buildings from, that would be grown both from wood or similar materials and from the fungus itself into things that are usable and we can make architecture from.